Greetings and welcome to the ROI Clear podcast. My name is Ray Hightower, and today we are fortunate to have as our guest Ms. Tari Thomas. Tari Thomas is a real estate investor, an engineer, and an entrepreneur. She is the founder of There's Room LLC, a socially conscious business startup. So we definitely want to drill down into that with her. She has an engineering degree from the University of Michigan and her MBA from the Thunderbird School of Global Management. Within real estate, she started off with single family and now is focused on multifamily. And we want to dig into all of that. Please join me in welcoming our guest, Ms. Tari Thomas. Welcome, Tari.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate you being here. So grateful to have you here. And to kick things off, we're going to ask you to do an elevator pitch. For those who are new to the ROI Clear podcast, Tari is on an elevator with someone she wants to influence. So we'll ask you, Tari, what would you say to that person in the course of an elevator ride?
You know what? It all depends on who that person is.
Okay.
But in respects to my business, I would say that we offer investor owner clients above market rents and peace of mind through our tenant management and property management in exchange for master leasing their properties to subdivide those spaces for goal-oriented tenants who are able to rent comfortable, affordable spaces where they need to live, work, play.
Boom. Excellent. Goal-oriented tenant. So you're looking for a certain type of tenant. And that tells me that the screening that you're going through is unconventional. So would you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's unconventional because, you know, with screening, you want to stay in fair housing. You know, you want to make sure you're above board, right? So
okay.
There are still traditional things that we do. We're looking at background checks. We're looking at their income, but it may not be as high. A lot of people do, 3x income. We've been as low as 2.5 and as high as probably like 2.75 because we just know, obviously their funds are a little bit less. Because the way we do our leases, we roll all of the utilities into the lease. So it gives renters the ability to be able to rent spaces, rent affordable rooms, and not have to think about not security deposit, excuse me, because we do take security deposits.
Yeah.
But utility deposits and things like that could take more just overhead from them.
Yes. So would it be fair to say that you've tailored your product to your market? You've tailored it to the
Correct.
To the owners and to the tenants,
Correct.
To the residents as well. Got it. All
yeah,
right. So
we do background checks. I mean, we do all of that. It's just slightly tweaked to that particular product, right? Because they're renting a room versus renting a whole home.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Now you have a great background. You have a background as an engineer. You were with a major chip maker, and it's up to you as to whether or not you want to mention them by name. But yeah. I was wondering if you could share with us a little bit about your background in engineering, how you grew up in that space, grew up in that profession, and then as we move forward, we'll connect the dots to what you're doing in real estate.
Yeah, well, I would like to say that my mom probably groomed me to be an engineer. I actually wanted to be an architect.
Ah.
And she said that was like extremely difficult space. And she put me in a lot of engineering programs during my like junior high school time period. So I was kind of groomed to be an engineer.
Yeah.
But I was always entrepreneurial as a kid, used to sell candy in my school and also on my block and things like that. And so I knew I didn't want like a really hard, like I wasn't a zeros and ones type of engineer, but more process systems. And so I went down the path of industrial operations engineering and I went to Michigan. Yes. And then I got recruited out to Arizona where I live now and worked for Intel Corporation for like 16 years. In all facets and spaces, I did global supply chain for many years. So, developing the strategy and how we ship our products around the world. So I worked with all sorts of different, from Asia to Brazil to all over. So I never knew what time zone I was in. And then before I left, I was working with self-driving vehicles, launching those products to market, working with names you probably know in different,
Yes.
also different geographies to figure out, the engines that we put into these vehicles to help them to do what they do. So yeah, that's the background. And but project management has always been the thread really across that. So business analytic, project management has always kind of been a theme across there, because I've always been managing teams to be able to bring together some results and drive a vision forward. So I think property management just already is in my wheelhouse for that, from that regard.
Wonderful. It's amazing how you tie that all together. As you said, you wanted to be an architect, when you were in junior high school, and your mother steered you in a direction to study engineering. And, thank you, Mom. Thank you for all of our moms, moms and dads and extended family, all the adults around us.
Right? Forget her for bad.
Yes. Yeah, really, really. And wonderful there. And then, so that passion for architecture, you channeled that into engineering, went into industrial operations engineering with Intel and supply chain management. Oh my goodness, that's even more critical now. You were on the cutting edge of what was happening, or what's happening now with supply chain management. And every year it seems
Are you talking about like near sourcing and things like that?
Yes, yeah, near sourcing, yeah. And would you define near sourcing for the people listening to us here?
So near sourcing is just strategies. Essentially, it costs money to stock up supplies. So when you're talking about inventory and where you want to ship products, all of that determines how much that company, the cost of your supply chain. So if that stack of inventory is just sitting, the closer it's sitting to you, the better, because you're able to pull it. It's not as long time period as far as pulling. So there's a million different strategies on how to just reduce inventory costs, reduce costs across the supply chain. And near sourcing is a strategy that is, so take it for, if US is the one consuming the products, they would use like a Mexico to kind of be, hey, we're going to try to source from a site as close as possible to us, instead of maybe choosing a China to develop this product or to manufacture this product. We're going to source it from somewhere that's close to us, like Mexico. It cuts out costs significantly.
Yeah.
And it all translates through to the customer. So either we're going to take the savings and that's additional profit margin, or you're going to pass it on to the customer.
Yeah. And the saying that I hear going around is that they're saying that Mexico is the new China.
Could be, in certain regards, I easily see that happening.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it isn't already in certain, and this is conversation. I mean, that was, near sourcing is like an old conversation. It's funny, like, people who are not in the space now know what it is. So it's starting to, finally like get into certain spaces now where I think people are more aware of what it means.
Sure. And in your role at Intel, or I should say roles at Intel, you traveled all over the world. As you said, you were in Asia, Brazil, that didn't know what time zone you were in sometimes, certainly getting the supply chain.
Working with those geographies, right? Like, just depending on, I'm talking to Ireland or talking to Israel or talking to, it just depends on what project I'm working on at the time. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So not necessarily physically there. Sometimes I had to physically absolutely be there, but always I was working different times of the night, just based upon, or the early morning, depending on which geography I was working with. Yeah. So my schedule was all over the place.
Tari gets it done. You got to get it done whenever it is, right? Yep, so 16 years doing that. When did you start exploring real estate?
I actually jumped into real estate like 2 years after I got out of college. I, was renting close by where I worked, and I was just like, yeah, why am I paying this? My mom has always kind of given me an ownership mentality. Yes. And so it was just, why am I paying this rent when, when I was looking at the prices of homes, I'm like, I could own a home right now, like paying the same amount. Like, this doesn't make any sense. And so my credit was shoddy. Not because I had bad credit, because I never had any credit cards, but I had no credit. Okay. So, so it took, I I pity my realtor at the time because she probably took me to see 1 million homes. And then there was this community that was way out. I just kept striking and finally got approved for a loan, did FHA, put 3% down on the home. Community that was just really starting to be developed in Arizona is now probably one of the hotter communities in Arizona after 15 plus years. Yes. And but that development was probably like the first or second development in that area. And bought that property at 24. And yeah, then I caught the bug and it was like, ooh, that was simple. I got an automatic 30 grand, my equity was just like, boom. Wow, that's money, and I saw the power of it. And because Arizona was so hot at that time, within a year, my property was almost double. 2 years, it was doubled the value that I paid for it. So I paid 130 and it was 270 at its height in 2 years.
Just the idea, 130 in Arizona.
I know. It's unheard of, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's unheard of. Back then, the interest rates looked like where it was now. So when people complaining about 7% and 6%, it's I think my interest rate was 8%, somewhere in this 7 to 8. Once again, my credit wasn't the greatest. I had an FHA loan. I put very minimal down and I saw, wow, that minimal down, look at all the equity I have, and then my wheels just started turning. And then I started, a strategy of, hey, I'm going to buy every 2. And, so I'm going to, trust to avoid capital gains taxes. And that kind of snowballed into, okay, I want to elevate that. And I did actually leave Intel for a year time period to strike out and do some more things on the real estate side. And it was just a bad year. It was the year everything crumbled. And so I ended up going back, and that's when I kind of got into the supply chain space. But yeah, my wheels are always, okay, how can I get deeper? Okay, flipping. Then I started doing some things in Baton Rouge when Katrina happened, because a lot of people from New Orleans were moving into the Baton Rouge area. And so it's just, I always wanted to continue to up the game.
You said a lot there. You said that, first of all, cutting edge. You went into this area when a lot of people weren't there. You were one of the pioneers there. And because of that, you achieved a real serious bump in equity, in your property, in your first deal. So that was wonderful. You left Intel briefly because you wanted to strike out on your own. Turns out it wasn't the ideal time to leave, but there's no way to know that in advance. There's no way to know that in advance, right?
Definitely not. Well, it actually coincided with them saying, hey, we're downsizing, we got to let some of these jobs go.
Yes.
I've been successfully laid off twice at Intel. We call it redeployment. Which is
redeployment,
really just,
yes. So they paid you. So you got some loot then. Yeah, good.
For sure.
Good.
And it's not like, they're not really saying, hey, we want you to go. They're saying, hey, if you find something else, we're just shutting down some jobs in this particular arena.
Sure.
But I was just like, no, I want to go.
Yeah.
Let's see what I can do with the real estate,
Sure.
And yeah.
And the fact that you were able to go back says a lot about your work ethic and your character, and the fact that those things were noticed about you, because you don't just roll up into a big corporation. You maintained your relationships. You had a very good track record, your work ethic and your character, and you were able to go back in. But that's because of who you are.
Yeah. It was a blessing. I mean, this is kind of a sidebar. A blessing how I got back. I actually invested in some stuff, and this is where my biggest lessons came from. I started investing in Costa Rica, which was I was getting in above my my grade of expertise. And at the end of that year, I was like, okay, yeah, I got to go back to work because I've blown up more than I wanted to, and right before I left the company, I interviewed with somebody, and I didn't get the position, but he said, hey, if I have an opportunity to bring you back, I will. And blessing, I just believe it was a blessing to me that it didn't get it at that point, but he called me right when I made the decision, okay, I need to go back.
Mm.
He called me within like a month time period of that time, like, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but we have an opening. Come on in. And I don't know if you have, by this time you should be at somewhere in a space, but I was like, wow, look at God.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, there's, and that's, the testing of the faith, that's where we, that our faith is strengthened through that testing, I believe.
Absolutely.
Our faith is,
Absolutely.
you know.
I definitely account that period of just, I learned a tremendous amount about myself. I think when you're in a corporation, you're really working for that corporation's mission. And
Yes.
sometimes you can get so caught up working for their mission that you forget your own vision for your life, your own mission for your life. When you separate, you start realizing all the things that you wanted to do and how close they are in reach.
Mm.
It's like, oh, it's possible because you're now not focused on someone else's vision. You're focused on your vision. And when you start focusing on those things, it just accelerates it, right? Because you're
Yes.
now you're tunnel visioned on that thing. Like, hey, this is something that I want to accomplish, that I want to do. And you see the opportunities coming more and more to you because of your focus on it. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's like, oh, that was like possible. Like, I've been thinking about doing that for 3 years and I didn't make any headway. But now that I'm, out here and it's open space, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's possible for me. And so there was definitely a ton of things I learned. I learned a lot of what I brought to the table. Once again, you're in a corporation, you think, oh, everybody has these skills. I'm just an engineer, or I'm just I think I really started like, oh, that's very unique about me.
Mm-hmm.
That's very unique about me. I bring that to the table. And so, I was able to really understand more about me, my vision, my purpose, and the things that I really wanted to achieve before I got back in. And I think that was really crucial because now when you rejoin an organization, you want to know, you're always going to be driving when you're part of an organization, you're driving for the mission. It's important to know your piece and your role in that collaboration, right? This is collaboration. This is no longer, I'm trying to convince you to hire
Yes.
me.
Mm-hmm.
I need to know how we fit together and why we fit together well. What am I going to glean from you? What are you going to glean from me? That's going to make this a great marriage and a great partnership.
Yeah, you want 1 + 1 not to equal 2, but to equal 4 or 8 or
For
32
sure.
or something. Yeah.
For
Excellent.
sure.
Excellent. I like the way you look at it. So let's move forward here. This is fascinating. We went from, middle school, grammar school, or middle school, high school, grammar school, architect, then into engineering at the encouragement of your mom, University of Michigan engineering degree, Thunderbird for the MBA, Intel, and then the real estate venture that you did in the area where nobody was, but you were the pioneer, and that worked out really well. Left Intel, went back. Tell us more about that. In there, you founded a company called There's Room. And tell us a little bit about There's Room. It's a socially conscious startup business. So tell us about
Yeah, you know what? I was actually in the process of working for a startup, leaving Intel, working for a startup. And
Mm,
my sister's husband passed away,
mm,
and he was the breadwinner. And
mm,
so it was like, okay, I want to go do this startup position. And I realized during the time period that she and my nephews were living with me, the need that people had for affordable spaces because they fell in the gap. They weren't able to garner any sort of social services,
mhm,
what people might look at as Section 8 and different things like that. But they also couldn't afford a full rental. And
mm,
why I call my tenants or renters goal oriented is because there's a lot of goal oriented people who fall in the gap. They want to achieve more, they want to do more, but they fall in the gap and they're not able to really make that leap to better, because
yes.
it's like, I'm either going to have to, and so she was trying to go back to school and finish her nursing degree,
Mhm,
and she tried to get aid and things like that and was denied.
mhm,
And it was just like, wow, there has to be a space for people who fall in that space, right? They're working individuals. They don't, they're good tenants. They don't have criminal backgrounds or anything like that, but they
mhm,
are looking to achieve something. Or, a lot of our renters may have going through a divorce. We have a lot of divorcees. right? They're
Sure.
separating from their spouses. They're trying to get back on their feet. You know, people who've had to pay medical bills for their kids. They have grown kids. I mean, just a litany of things that put
Mm.
people. A lot of times you hear your one paycheck from homelessness.
Yes.
A lot of people are, right, and so it leaves a lot of good people that you see that you hand your kids off to in the morning, and you don't even realize they're in a situation where they need that space.
Mm.
And so that's the reason why I started it. And then, I was just kind of noodling on, okay, I was looking at really just taking, hey, let me just rehab, multifamily, small multifamily spaces. I was really trying to be in that space of, okay, what can I do and build it? And I was going through all the process, and I was just like, wow, this process, number one, you have to have a lot of partnerships.
Mm.
And the process is just, it takes too long. And it was like, how can we tap into what's already existing? And it was just like, oh, what if people were doing what I'm doing with my sister, right? I'm a single woman. I have these extra beds.
Mm-hmm.
They're occupying these spaces. What if we tapped into the available spaces in people's homes? And I researched it. I don't know how this information was out there or who was tapping into it, but they were like, hey, there's 1 million extra guest bedroom spaces. Maybe it was for Airbnb. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
There's a
yeah,
million
yeah.
extra guest bedrooms in Arizona. And I was like, wow, that's more than enough to meet the need. And so that's kind of where my mind started churning. And I actually wasn't looking to sign up for this competition, but right when I left Intel and was like, okay, let me keep looking. I wasn't even looking to start the business. I was looking to get into more startup,
Right.
to a startup company. And I went to this networking event, happened to pitch the business, and won third place in this competition. And it was like, okay,
Mm.
you have the time, you
Mm.
have the opportunity, maybe you should start this thing. And I mean, it was raw, a raw idea.
But you cooked it, you prepared it, added some
Right,
seasoning,
right.
put it in the
Hey, put a
oven,
little
and
salt, pepper on it. Maybe not enough salt, too much pepper.
that is all right. So you consistently have ideas. And you know what? This idea also came from your desire to serve. Family, we look out for each other in our families, right? And you saw that
For
you
sure.
could, help your sister and your nephews and help them.
Yeah.
And then in doing that, you found a business opportunity, and it's your desire to serve that has led to these opportunities to
Absolutely.
build your
Yeah.
businesses.
I feel like if you can make it win-win, like that's for me, that's like the ultimate win.
Yeah.
The ultimate
Yeah.
win.
What is it, or let me ask it this way. Tell us a story of something that happened within There's Room or your other ventures, but we can focus on There's Room if you like. Tell us a story about There's Room within the past year that has really excited you, that you're really proud of.
Ooh, that we're really proud of. I mean, there's so many little stories. But there were a lot of people during the whole COVID period that couldn't, they had gaps like, oh, we lost our job, or especially in the C space where, they're shortening their hours. We realized
Yes.
a lot of people getting their hours cut, and they
Oh,
weren't able, they were
yes.
trying to like, okay, how do I bridge from this to that? And they weren't able to make certain payments. And we were able to really work with a lot of the nonprofit organizations and
Mhm.
organizations here. We kind of knew how to work it so that these organizations were able to like give the rental assistance. So we were able to really provide a lot of rental assistance during that time for those people that had the need. It was probably about like 10, maybe 8%, of our renters that were falling into trouble,
Mhm.
and we were able to give them provide support.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you were there to provide that support.
Yeah, we helped assist it. We didn't give the money, but we worked with those rental assistance organizations to
Yes.
uh, to ensure that we were on top of it. What documents do you need? What do you to make sure that the process could just that they didn't fall in the eviction time period, because it's still a business, right? We still have to do what
Mhm.
we have to do. We have a responsibility to owners. But if we can get those needs met, that rent met within a certain time period, then that's our goal. and they
Right.
bridged and they rebounded, right? And
Yeah.
so we kept them out of the eviction space.
Yeah. That is you were a blessing to many people during that time, I'm sure, because when you're going through something like that, to have to go through a bunch of paperwork, that can be stressful, and sometimes it can feel like, oh, my brain can't handle this right now. But you're there
Yeah.
to smooth that
Yeah, well, and
transition.
I think a lot of people, I mean, they had to do a lot of the paperwork, but I think a lot of renters didn't trust the process and were like, hey, if you tell us early enough and we know what documents to get you to make sure, because, especially government organizations and city organizations, I mean, they can be slower, right? And so it's like, no, we
Yeah.
know how to move the needle, right? And so,
Yes.
um, just with what to provide them, how to provide it, like make sure you're giving them so the process could be smooth and we can get it turned around within a certain time period.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, over the years, you've owned, many single family homes, and recently you've made the transition or are making the transition into multifamily. Tell us a little bit about that. What was the motivation there, and how is that progression going for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to be in multifamily. I didn't realize what it took to get there. I think I
Mhm.
always thought, "Oh, I got to have a ton of money to get into multifamily." And so did single family, did condos, did a million different things and different strategies, Burr and I think in the probably around 2015 to 17 time period, it was like, okay, I need to find a strategy to get enough capital to at least take down small multifamily. And
Right.
so I bought, I was just buying condos at the time because
Mhm.
that was the low end of the totem pole. But I
Mhm.
looked at, I had my strategy of looking in areas that were in the pathway of regentrification, so that I could play on the kind of the upswing of appreciation and rehab stuff that people didn't, people assumed they didn't want to be in those areas, and then they transition in 3 years to good areas, more B areas than C areas.
Right.
So that's always kind of been my little strategy. And then so I sold a couple of those and then worked my way into, upgraded into fourplexes
Mhm.
and then just saw the immediate like, whoa, there, look at that capital.
Yeah,
Just,
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, look at that cash flow. Excuse me, not capital.
Actually, yes.
Look at that
Mhm.
cash flow. Just, like multiply like overnight, right? And it's still
Mhm.
one building, still having to manage, and it just made more sense. Um, and then getting into the syndication space, which is where I'm at now, it was I kind of had the thought process from There's Room that, hey, we need to start really owning more of these properties.
Mhm.
And I started really just seeking, okay, how do we own these? And I wasn't even thinking about multifamily, but it was just like, and then a friend of mine's invited me to a VSV conference
Mhm.
and it was like, oh, this is how you own it.
Yes, yes, yes,
And it was
yes.
just like I was searching for it and it wasn't quite what I thought it would look like, but this could work. And
Yes.
so that just fueled, I jumped right in there and just learning all of what syndication was and how do you take down large multifamily and just seeing what other people had done. And it's funny because I'd seen these projects all me and another friend who were also in real estate, we'd see these projects like, I wonder who owns that. I wonder who owns that. And had I known at that time, like, oh, they're average people just coming together, pooling their capital together to take down these properties.
Mhm.
And, that's it. Like,
Mhm.
it's not, hedge funds, and it is in some certain regards, but, it's just like, wow, this is really doable. And so you once again just now I'm hosting meetups just to let people know about it and
Mhm.
like, hey, if this is possible for me, it's possible for you too. I want to let you in on, it's not really a secret, but you probably don't know it. And so
Right.
started just inviting friends to get together and just, hey, let's take something down. Like
Yes.
this is doable. Like it's
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It takes some effort, and it takes discipline, and it takes absorbing knowledge, and and going to events like yours, your meetups where you're inviting people to come in and learn all of that together. So
Yeah.
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 And we actually
Absolutely.
met at a VSV event. So
Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that's
Right. Actually, the one that I went to, that was the first
yeah.
time I don't know how I'd seen you previously, but I knew your name and I was like, oh, this is Ray
There's
Hightower.
that
I
knucklehead.
think at
Yeah,
that
there he is.
first event. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Okay. Wonderful. And then I
Yeah.
looked up one day, I'm in church. I look up and you're there at church. I didn't
You
realize we
know
were at the
what?
same
It's
church
funny
too.
like that.
Yeah.
It's funny
This
how,
is
your world just gets small after a while.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think the multifamily space is small as well. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
large, but it's small. Like after you've traveled and traversed and gone to conferences and you probably can speak to this more than anybody, is you realize like, whoa, like, oh, they know, it just everything starts getting more and more connected.
Yeah, yeah, we are all connected, and yeah, we are all connected. And I'm just really, it's just really wonderful hearing how you are leveraging those connections to help people. And I just see you blowing up in a big way with what you're doing in multifamily. It's just going to multiply what you've been doing for the past several years, and that's wonderful.
That's the
That's so
hope. That's
cool.
definitely the hope.
That is so
Absolutely.
cool. That is so
And it's
cool.
not, I've done a lot of things solo previously in the single family home space, and that's all good and dandy, but it's just like now it's like it requires partnership.
Yes,
Absolutely
yes,
requires partnership.
yes, it does. Yes, it
And
does.
so I'm trying to get people, and I'm really convincing people just like me, like who thought, oh yeah, well you do it. Well, I want to kind of own it by myself, and it's like, yeah, I get it because I've been there, right? I've been
Yeah,
there. You want to own your own piece,
yeah,
but I'm telling you, it's something that when you join forces, obviously you got
yeah.
to know who you're joining forces with. You got to do
Right.
your due diligence, right?
Yep.
But
Yep.
it's, man, it's something. It's like you said, 1 + 1 is 4. I mean, you just
Yes.
you just gain momentum, and yeah, it's easier. So
If you want to carry that sofa, it's easier with more than one person.
right, essentially.
There it is. Well, Tari, we're coming towards the end of our time together. This has gone quickly, and I just always enjoy listening to you and everything that you're working on. As we wrap up, can you share with our audience what is it that you're reading or listening to? Because you're constantly sharpening your, that axe or that saw. So, what are you reading or
Yeah.
listening to sharpen your
What am I
saw?
reading or listening to? I am doing a lot of it's the garden with it's not even related to real estate. So I don't know.
That's all right. Go for it. It's
It's the
mindset.
garden
It's yeah.
within. I'm really doing a lot of inspection on, just my spiritual walk, my spiritual faith, and how things are connected.
Yes.
But it just talks about how your emotions drive your about how your emotions drive your the thoughts, and your thoughts to your actions. So a lot of times they say control your mind, and that, like, think positively and all that good stuff. And the book
Mm-hmm.
really talks about how it's really your emotions that drive the belief systems that you have.
Yes.
And so it's just kind of like the wiring, and it's a lot of spirituality, and so I'm always looking within of what's driving me, and what causes me to, for me to I'm always trying to be the best Tari I can be. And
Yes.
so if I see that there's something that might be limiting me in a certain area, I always want to understand, okay, what is that rooted in, and how can I, dig it up at the root.
Sure.
So
Yes.
yeah, so
Yes.
that one's, specifically just for me to continue to progress moving forward, because everything translates. It then translates to real estate, right? Like if I
Right.
understand me more, what my limiting beliefs or areas that I can shift and work on, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to translate in every area that I'm connected to. So
Yes. We need to make sure we include that in the show notes. Again, the title of the book is The Garden Within.
yep. Hmm.
Okay, very
By
good. We'll make sure.
Dr. Anita Phillips.
Okay. All right.
Hmm.
We'll make sure that we include that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Finally, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's so many ways. I'm definitely on LinkedIn. I'm pretty present on there, so you can always find me there. I have a podcast as well, Lessons into Blessings. So
Yes.
at YouTube, at Lessons into Blessings is the tag. And then you can also go to www.there'sroom. You just want to know more about the organization. And yeah, that's about it.
Wonderful, wonderful. And we'll include those links as well.
Yeah, no
Tari
worries.
Thomas, it has been a pleasure speaking to you here on the ROI Clear podcast.
Same here. Thanks for having me on.